as you guys can see, we're having McDonald's. I love McDonald's. We're gonna plate it in 3, 2, 1. Hi, boo thangs. Welcome back to my channel where we listen to spooky stories and eat some yummy food together. OMG. Today we have McDonald's, of course, a Big Mac with some fries and a Coke to drink. And today we're gonna be listening to people's stories of the Appalachian Mountains. I've always been so intrigued by the Appalachian Mountains. Also, just want to apologize in advance. My stories are dubbed by AI, so I'm not sure if they will be correctly pronouncing. And my apologies if I am mispronouncing Appalachian. If you're from there or if you know the proper pronunciation, comment down below, guys. Have you guys had any sort of experiences in the Appalachian Mountains? Let me know, I'm so curious. And I would love to go one day, but I'm kinda scared. Anyways, let's get into our first bites. Sorry, super bubbly. Alright, boo things, if you're ready to jump in, then get your favorite snack, get a nice cozy blanket, and let's get freaky, guys. Let's go. Let's begin with story number 1.
My grandma's property is settled all the way in the back of the woods at the end of a long, unpaved road. Along with being comically bumpy, it also has a history of hauntings that were passed between family members over the years. I myself was somewhat skeptical of these tales, not because I'm not a believer of the paranormal, but because my uncle and father have a habit of being very exaggerative, until one night about a year ago. Back then, I lived with my grandma down at the end of that road, and at the time I also didn't own a car. As such, my boyfriend had to walk to my house from the entrance of the road since his parents didn't want to risk damaging their vehicles on the aforementioned bumpy road. Now mind you, this road is a good 20-minute walk from beginning to end, completely overgrown with bushes and trees, and has a puddle every other step, so more often than not, I'd meet him halfway, and then walk him back to the entrance once he went home. That night, when we were walking back to the entrance, I decided to tell him about the property's haunted history. From the silver buried on 4 corners of the property, to appease a supposed deer spirit to the knocking on the counters at night, I spilled every tale I'd ever heard. Now, unlike me, he was genuinely afraid of such tales, as he himself had once had an experience very similar, albeit much more terrifying, to the one I was about to have. He warned me not to do one thing: don't whistle at night. Now, a thing to know about me: I'm a habitual whistler and tend to do it without even thinking about it. So, of course, on my way back, I began to sing a tune. That particular night, it was unusually bright outside for being so late. The sky was still a dull blue, and there was hardly a shadow despite being well past 8:30. I had gotten to the quarter mark of the road, an almost gateway of bushes on a small ridge going further into the road, when I heard something. A yell that very, very distinctly sounded like an old man. I'd love to pull out every excuse under the sun, but I was evidently feeling very stupid that night. Now that I've had time to think about it, I've noted 2 things. 1, there is no possible way there could have been an elderly man on or near the road. My grandma is the only person that lives on that end of the road. 2nd, as I mentioned, was the word in the yell: help. My boyfriend, after hearing the story, said it was meant to be a lure. For what? Me. Death. All that fun stuff. As I walked, I got to the halfway mark of the road, a field of dead yellow grass and a single fallen tree on the left-hand side of the road. I'd seen it hundreds of times before, and every time I'd thought, why is that tree still there? As I took my courtesy look at the tree, I noticed something. Someone. It. To this day, I don't understand what I saw. It wasn't a cryptid, not a monster, nor a demon. Standing a good 30 feet away from the tree was, honest to God, and what I can only describe it as, was a sheet ghost. A simple rounded pillar of white nearly 8 feet tall and as still as the tree before it. It stood there. And it saw me. I know it did. It had no eyes, no face, but it did. I had never truly known fear before that night. I froze in place and felt like a mouse beneath a cat's paws. Caught. Hopeless. Faster than I could blink, it ducked behind the tree and stayed there. 30 feet traversed in under a second. Once it was behind the tree, it stayed there, and I could move again. The sensible among you probably think I ran. I didn't. I didn't want to get its attention again. 10 minutes of absolute silence and paranoia as I walked home, utterly terrified. I got home, and there sat my grandma on her little red couch smoking her cigarette. "You look like you've seen a ghost," she chuckled. I had. I've gotten all kinds of answers for what I saw. Skinwalker, Wendigo, hide behind. For now, I just wanted to share my story and let speculation generate more ideas as to what I saw.
Oh boy, can anyone explain what it is about whistling at night in the Appalachian Mountains? That seems to be a common thing that I hear. Don't whistle at night. I also hear that Appalachian Mountains are crawling with skinwalkers. Which will be another episode I'll be getting into. But guys, let's get into story number 2.
I'm a nomad living out of the back of my truck. I travel to work seasonal jobs, and in my off time I live on NF/BLM/DNR land. I've always been very open to unexplainable experiences. I had my first experience with a spirit ghost when I was 13 and started seeking out the paranormal after my initial encounter. Last winter I worked outside of Yosemite. When the season ended, I had a month to get back up to Oregon for my summer job. I bounced around central Northern California for a bit, but I really wanted to get up to Mount Shasta to watch the sky for a couple nights. Unfortunately, snow hit the area, and I have a pitiful RWD truck and didn't feel like risking the mountain roads. I decided to stay near Shasta Lake on my way to the Redwoods instead. I found a surprisingly cheap campsite and arrived on a Sunday evening. My site was on the edge of a small bluff along a river. The only other people in the campground were a family in an RV, 2 parents and 2 boys riding bikes. I had a couple beers, made some stir-fry, then called it a night. When I sleep out in the woods, I usually leave my tailgate and bed topper open so I can stretch out and don't have to worry about condensation. I woke up at 1:55 a.m. I know this because I always check the time when I wake up to see how much longer I get to sleep. I was so goddamn thirsty that I was frantically trying to fill my water bottle with a 3-gallon water jug. I ended up spilling on myself and my sleeping bag, and I was cursing and causing a ruckus. Just as I got everything cleaned up and was about to turn off my lantern, I heard something that made me freeze. I couldn't tell what I heard because of my own commotion, so I chalked it up to a distant animal. I went to reach for my lantern a second time and I heard help. I realized this was what I heard the first time. It sounded like a 8 to 10-year-old boy calling from the river, and I remembered seeing the family in the RV. Without thinking, I pulled on my boots and started to climb out of the bed of my truck to try and help. Then I heard it again. The only way I can describe it is it sounded like an animal calling for help with the voice of a young boy. It didn't sound like an animal call. It didn't sound like a boy. It called help like a boy then. Help like an animal call. Every hair on my body stood up and my gut screamed at me to lock myself in. I slammed my tailgate and topper window. I couldn't lock either from the inside, so I laid there listening. I didn't have a gun, just a hatchet and a buck knife. I laid in the back of my truck for 45 minutes listening to the same repeating call. Help, like a boy. Help, like an animal. It never grew closer, it never faded. It just stopped. I've spent a lot of time living in the woods. I've heard mountain lions, bobcats, and rabbits scream. This was not that. I've spent a lot of time searching out the paranormal. I have never felt the overwhelming fear that I felt that night. I know the energy that flowing water can carry, so I stayed at that same site for 2 more nights to see if it was residual. I set an alarm for 1:55 a.m. both nights and never heard a sound.
Another skinwalker. I hate that they always try to say, help, help, because they know that most humans would be looking around, going to help, right? Especially if it's an older person or a younger person. Those demons are smart. Don't fall for their tricks. Let's get into our third story.
Northern Appalachia is just as weird as the South Credit website. Reddit credit user, xoxo. A few years back, I lived in Berkshire County, Massachusetts, named for the Berkshire Mountain Range. The Berkshires are actually a sub-range of the Northern Appalachian Mountains, and I assume if you spend any time in paranormal spaces like this forum, you know weird shit happens in the Appalachians. I guess I figured since I was so far north, I was safe from the usual appy haunts, safe to whistle at night, or walk the woods alone, or to not close my curtains after dark. I was wrong. It was either late summer or early fall of 2020, and my fiancé and I were leaving the tiny suburb where we lived to go to a nearby bigger city for cheaper groceries. In order to get there, we had a 20 to 30-minute drive, the first leg of which was through a heavily wooded hilly area. It must have been around 6 or 7 during the evening, still bright out and well lit, though visibility was poor because everything is lush green bushes and trees. We were driving up a hill road with a couple houses, both sides of the street full to bursting with plant life. The green was super dense and impossible to see into. It was warm, so we were driving with the windows down. As we got to the top of the hill, we heard a strange noise. My partner and I both grew up surrounded by woods and wildlife, so we know deer when we hear them. Some people who are unfamiliar with deer might think they're serene and totally silent, but when deer want to be loud, they can make some haunting sounds. Especially if it's a male calling long distance. It's like a long booming honk, like a war horn. Think in the family of a bagpipe, but with an edge that clearly marks it as animal instead of mechanical. Anyway, we recognized it as a deer, but it sounded wounded. The honk was distressed and wobbled at the end like the deer was losing strength. Unfortunately, people speed in the area, and it wasn't unbelievable that some jackass had hit a deer and drove off without calling animal control or helping in any way. We couldn't see skid marks, blood, or a body on the road, so I asked my fiancé to pull over into someone's driveway so I could check the dense foliage on the sides of the road. Deer like to hide themselves and hide their babies, and I, a bleeding heart animal lover and also an idiot, was on the verge of panicking about how we were going to help this injured baby deer. I was already making plans to visit the veterinary hospital in the area that kept late-night hours, as I began pushing aside bushes and looking around. I've never interacted up close with a deer, so I was making soft little "come here, kitty" sounds, cats being my only reference at the time. I searched the bushes on the side of the street with the houses, which was slightly less dense because of the driveways, but I found nothing. I checked both ways and crossed to the heavier wooded side, and began looking there. I don't have the best eyesight to begin with, so sorting through the green was difficult, and it took me some time. My fiancé was busy speaking with the homeowner of the driveway we were parked in. He had come out to see if we had had an accident or flat tire and if we were okay. Luckily, I heard a rustle. My heart dropped as I realized it was right against the edge of the road, in the very first row of bushes. Not an ideal hiding spot for a deer, which meant the poor creature might have been in worse condition than I thought if it couldn't drag itself deeper into the foliage. I moved downhill towards the sound, placing myself right at the crux of the road's turn. A blind corner. The rest happened so fast, but for me it felt like slow motion. I bent down to move some branches aside where I thought the rustling had come from, hoping that the animal wouldn't run or try to jump at my face. I was so entranced with finding it, with helping. I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I had left a hurt animal behind. I finally cleared to the bottom of the bush, seeing the ground with its leaf litter. Baby deer camouflaged nicely into fallen leaves and dirt, so I stared into the space hard, but there was nothing there. No shape, no eyes, no movement, just dirt. Still, I felt compelled to stay there, in that position, back to the road. It felt like if I just looked long enough, the deer might appear in front of me. What actually appeared, directly behind me, was a speeding minivan taking the turn way too freaking fast. There are no sidewalks on this street and no guardrails. There was just the blind turn, a bad driver who couldn't calculate right, and me at the edge of the road not looking.
What the fuck?
I heard the van, and that alone forced me to rip my eyes away from the bushes. I threw myself out of the way of the van and into the leaves, tripping backwards until my back hit a tree that steadied me. I had been only a moment and a few inches away from being absolutely creamed. The van didn't even stop, didn't acknowledge that they'd almost flattened a person. My fiancé called for me. The search for the deer, which we hadn't heard call again since we first pulled over, was too dangerous to continue. I looked both ways about 1,000 times, panicking, and jittered my way over to the safer side of the street and the driveway we were in. We got back into our car, listened a moment more, and then left on our grocery run. My fiancé could tell something had happened, and I believed they had suspicions that something other than just the car spooking me had occurred. I didn't want to talk about it. We were still driving through the woods after all, and we'd have to drive back this way. I kept it to myself, the pull I had felt, the hypnotic way I could have spent hours looking into that hollow in the bushes, the way I felt so sure. I would find the injured baby I was looking for if I'd just stay, right there in that spot. The way I was sure now as we pulled away, that there wasn't and had never been an injured deer. Something called me to that spot, and I ignored all the Appalachian advice I had ever heard. I answered, and I almost ended up a smear on the pavement for it. I don't know why whatever was there wanted to cause someone's death. I don't know why I was able to avoid it succeeding. I don't know a lot of things about the motivations of the old things that live in the Berkshires, what they are, why they do what they do, if they hate us, or if they're just hungry. But what I do know is, they exist. They're dangerous. Every bit as dangerous as their southern cousins. The northern Appalachians may not be as popular of a topic, but they're no less old, wild, or vicious than the southern counterpart. I guess I'm posting this because I want people to know that, to remember that. These mountains are older than bone, older than the rings on Saturn, and shit just as old exists here. If we lose sight of that, if we think some miles of distance and a different state boundary protects us, we are walking into a trap with eyes wide open. Be careful in the Berkshires. Be careful in the Appalachians, wherever you are on them. And if you hear something call to you, know you didn't.
I like that one. If you hear something call for you, no, you didn't. You keep walking straight ahead. It's probably a trap. Alright, boo things. What did we think about those stories? There's always so much creepy stuff going on around there, and they're always trying to ask for your help. They're trying to lure you in. Don't listen or fall for it. Boo things, let me know if you have any sort of experiences similar to that. I would love to hear your stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and comment down below what you guys think was following them in the Appalachian Mountains. I'm gonna go ahead and say skinwalker probably. So scary. And also, if anyone has any food recommendations that you guys would like to see, you can also let me know. Comment down below what's your